Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Disorganized Play, my live stream of DM questions where I tempt you with bits of juicy experience and insight, a taste of my delicious wisdom, and in return, you pay me with your eyeballs. Oh, wow. Okay, that got a little... That was dark. That was... it was a little grim and unnecessary. Hello. Garav Galati is in the chat, everyone. Hello and welcome. So, it is Disorganized Play. I'm Tom Lommel. I'm this guy. I am here to talk about this thing and these things and kind of this thing, sort of. I will accept bits, yes, although I don't know what to do with them during Disorganized Play, so I may have to text Dom and see if we can arrange for some sort of special fireworks to go off or something. But hello, welcome everyone. Thank you to all of our regulars and mods for joining us in the chat here today. You know how the show works. On Tuesdays, I prep a D&D game. On Wednesdays, we run the D&D game right here for you, right now. Well, not really. It's at 8 o'clock Pacific time, which gets a little late for everyone. And then on Thursdays, I come back and talk about how it was all different or interesting or better, sometimes worse, than what I had anticipated in my mind. And sometimes I rely on you to do a little bit of brainstorming and help me craft the session as well. So that's the nuts and bolts. I'm a long-time gamer, especially a long-time D&D player, so that is one of my areas of expertise. If you have questions today about anything, I'm happy to try and answer those. Specifically, if you have questions about the Dungeons and Dragons and maybe about running D&D, I would be happy to address those. So, yes, on Thursday we complain about the game. So, yeah, let's start by complaining about the players. What's the deal with that ranger dude? He really seems evil. He was lawful good. Now he's chaotic neutral. And he tried to murder his father last night? Or did he? So, let's discuss today's agenda, shall we? Welcome to it. We are going to talk more about the techniques that were in play last night than we're going to talk a lot about the events of the game last night. So I'm going to talk about reveals, I'm going to talk about offers, I'm going to talk about winding the clock too tightly. What does that mean? I don't know that any of this is like groundbreaking type of advice, but I do think that it's important to just step back and take a minute to look at how these things worked their way into the session and what the effects were and kind of why they were that way. And I think the I want to kind of background this with two different pieces of information. So, one of them is I had decided that we were not going to have any combat last night. That was largely a foregone conclusion. I mean, if there was a reason for it to come up, it could have come up. You always have the monster manual on hand, right? So I wasn't 100% ruling out that possibility, but I was 95, like there was none scheduled on the docket, and I didn't have any intent of including any. We had come off of a few different sessions where we had battles, and we came off of a session where we had a big boss-style encounter with the the labyrinth and the shadows that were chasing the party around the labyrinth and whatnot. So, I thought that it was time to change things up, to have a change of pace in terms of what types of encounters we were going to experience for that session, right? So, and not only that, but combat encounters very rarely reveal more information. And that is your primary job, as we've talked about over and over and over again here on Disorganized Play, is that as a DM, your job is to reveal information. That's so clutch. It's so key to running a session. And I don't think that a lot of conventional role-playing advice puts the proper amount of stress on that function. I think there's a lot of focus on, run the game and kind of like manage, have back and forth with the players. There's a lot of stuff like you're telling a story together. Well, that's true, but that's like saying a novel is a story that's over 40,000 words. Yes, that's the definition of what it is, but that doesn't give you any insight on how to structure a novel, how to go about writing, whatever it is, a 5 or 3 or 7 act type of story structure, plotting, pacing, and all that kind of stuff, right? So, what's up, Garav? So I think there's a neglect of telling the DM, okay, this is how you go about telling a story with the players. This is how you actually, this is the main thing that you do, which is you reveal information to your players. You have a storehouse of clues and plots and hooks and mystery and whatnot, and it's your job to then explore those in response to the player's actions. Reveal those in response to the player's actions. BSB Care points out, only one of the parties involved is the omniscient narrator, while the others are the protagonists. Yes, that's a very good way of putting it. But nobody sits down and goes, well, the omniscient narrator's job is to reveal information. Like, that seems obvious, right? Okay, that's true that it seems obvious in terms of writing a novel. It does not seem to be regularly put that way in terms of running an RPG game, right? So, where was I going with that? So that's your job, is to reveal information, and combat doesn't really, very rarely does that, right? Combat is an obstacle to revealing information, or it's a very protracted way of forcibly removing or revealing information from somebody that you capture, right? Like, so often, and I think this is the mistake, but it's a mistake I've certainly fallen into, is you have a fight and then everybody's dead, and there's the only state change at the end of it is the players have gotten a good workout with their dice and earned some experience points. And if they're smart, they captured a prisoner because they want to advance the story and gain some information. But if they're your typical kind of bloodthirsty cutthroats, then they've killed every single person who could yield insight into why there's a fight, what they were guarding, what's going on, and then then as the DM, if you want to reveal information, you have to figure out a way of like, okay, well, they all seem to have this same tattoo. They all seem to be wearing this cloak with this weird insignia pin, and you look at it and through a couple of rolls, oh yes, that's a, they all belong to the cult of Ogremok, the god of elemental, evil earth elementals, or whatever it is, right? So that's one of the reasons, if we look at where we are in terms of the adventure arc, this was really the closing session, right? Like, this was the final cap. This was the final installment of White Plume Mountain. And now we're going to go on an interlude to Waterdeep and, essentially start something new. With, of course, some threads that are getting interwoven from the storyline that we've built so far. That's what I might have a maintenance guy coming to visit here. We'll see what happens. That's what a campaign is about, right? Like, you don't just like drop all of your threads at the end of each adventure. You resolve a bunch of them, but then there are some that continue to spring forward and become ongoing things, etc. As we've seen sort of in a lot of ways, this weird temptation vampire thread weave its way across the story, which was largely unintentional, right? Like, it was a function of the adventures that I chose to run out of Tales of the Yawning Portal. So with the fact that this was going to be, that the other piece of this is, for a change of pace, we decided to shift to more RP stuff, just because it was time for a change of pace in terms of what the play experience was like. And then secondly, because we know that this is closing the door and tying off the last loops of plot that we want to tie off here in White Plume Mountain, we have to have an RP heavy session because it allows us to get so much more information out. It allows us to convey so many more things through RP interactions versus some sort of fight or whatever, right? So that's the background. The two important things are, we decided it was not going to be a big combat slugfest, or really any combat. We weren't going to burn time with combat in this session. And then secondly, I had decided that this really was kind of the closing, landing the arc of all of the events set in motion by going off to explore White Plume Mountain, right? As BSB Care points out, this tapestry has been completed, tied off, and start the next tapestry. Yeah, I'm getting a few dropped frames, not as bad. I was getting a few more at the top of the stream, but you should be largely okay. So that's those were some decisions that I had made in terms of, this is my goal for, here's how this session is going to be structured, here's what I want to do. I want to get kind of to the end of this. I want to get the party on the road to Waterdeep, etc. So I looked at the different things that we had to pay off. We talked about those on Tuesday, right? So we had to deal with, Dell and freeing her. We had to deal with Thawne's father and what were the implications of that. And we had to deal with just the physical aspect of, like, what's this, what are all the kind of the weird things that this dungeon can do, right? Like, that was something that was sort of outside the storyline, promised as a chat thing, was that this Protocol 66 thing would get revealed and provide a conundrum for the players. So those are the three main things, and then we had a bunch of other stuff that we needed that were sprinkled in there as enticements for chat to unlock, and you unlocked all of them for the most part, right? So just parenthetically, like by way of background, going into this session, I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to fill 3 hours of time because it was so RP heavy, and if the players didn't show an interest in what was going on and didn't want to have some debate about what to do next, all of a sudden it can be a very quick, abbreviated session. You find yourself 2 hours in going, well, all right, so you're in Waterdeep. You know, that's why I brought the book with me and whatnot. I'm glad we didn't get there in some respects because we had some really rich, fun, and interesting encounters. But you never know, right? I was very apprehensive, and I don't know. I was concerned that we wouldn't necessarily either unlock all of the things that were on offer, or we just would chew through a bunch of stuff and it would be race headlong towards Waterdeep. That's fine. BSB Care says it was funny watching Amy after you gave a peek behind the curtain about the different tiers that affected thing. Hey everybody, tuning in as usual. It's my wife. All right, that's that. So, well, you never know what they're going to debate. You never know what the party is going to debate, right? They are at odds with each other because it's been sort of this. Strangely, it's been this long descent into darkness, really, where we started off with one member of the party kind of clearly tempted by chaotic forces or not very well understood forces, potentially malicious forces. And now, because of Black Razor, we have two, and I don't know. I don't think Grayson or Avril are susceptible to that sort of thing. But now we may see, like, okay, well, how do we get out of this? It's been an interesting set of change. Yes, and Dirk Portley, your bits for my bits was a nice change. So, yeah. So that's the buzz. So let's just talk briefly about these types of encounters that were, or the types of things that were deployed in these role-playing encounters. And basically the two main techniques that I want to talk about are reveals and offers, right? So if we're going to do a role-playing encounter, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm trying to classify what types of role-playing encounters you might have. And the only three that I can think of is you're going to have a role-playing encounter. There's four. You could have a role-playing encounter that's a reveal. You can have a role-playing encounter that's an offer. You can have a role-playing encounter that ends in a threat. And then you could have a role-playing encounter that is a distraction or whimsy. You know? And that's almost kind of like a meta type of role-playing encounter where technically you should have it end in a whimsical encounter should still maybe end in some sort of reveal of information or offer of assistance or threat against the party, etc. But whimsical encounters really are there to be indulged for the sake of the fun of role-playing and not so much for plot advancement purposes, right? So I think you need to consider that when you're trying to decide, like, okay, well, what type of role-playing encounter is this? So the first thing, of course, is a reveal. Now, there's just the straightforward reveal of, oh, you're looking for Elminster of Shadowdale. He lives in that tower. It's very straightforward A to B type of, you asked, you need to go there, there it is, ta-da, you did it, right? So that's one type of reveal, like get the information up there in a straightforward and direct fashion. And I don't mean to position that as, oh, this is not good game mastering. This is a bad way to reveal information. I know I did sort of like perform that in a very, I don't know, pathetic kind of way. But my point is, it's not necessarily a bad way to get information out, because a direct reveal like that can be to the point, move the story along, keep your pacing up, go, 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 rather than bogging down in a lot of negotiation or having some sort of reveal that is obtuse and then eventually they get around to it, or they have to solve a riddle or something like that. It's really, really frustrating for players to have to pull information out of NPCs when they're reluctant to share, when when they're bargaining and no one understands what the terms of the bargaining are, like what does that NPC want or whatever. So be careful about withholding information. So the direct reveal is a tool in your toolbox that you should deploy commonly. Why make everything so hard? Grease the skid sometimes. Let's get this story going. Okay, well then you go and ask this person. Turns out that they know a lady over on the over in the C ward who knows, in the docks ward or whatever, who knows this and da 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 da. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing a direct reveal. There are certainly fancier ways of doing it. There's more interesting characters that you can create rather than just the random goon on the street who's like, he's over that way. Sure. So I don't mean to poo-poo the direct reveal, but that's like the most elemental form of reveal. The kind of reveal that we saw last night more commonly was the surprise twist, right? And I don't think that the surprise twist has to be... Honestly, you could probably just take the surprise out of it and go the twist, which is the party knows an established set of information. We know that Del and Gregory went up to the Sunless Citadel. We believe they went up there to gather more of this weird vampire wood that Del's parents used in crafting these toys. We think that Gregory instigated this. Although if you were paying attention, you knew that from a flashback that Amy had, Del instigated it, right? So it's the twist. That's the twist is Del pops out of the prison and goes, well, I swore that I wouldn't tell anybody, but I went up there because I talked to this half-elf woman, and she said if I got her the perfect piece of Golthius root, that she can craft a thing that'll allow her to control it, right? So that's a tremendously powerful storytelling technique. It's a tremendously powerful way to keep your players engaged, to keep them interested in what's going on, and to keep moving your plot forward. Well, we thought it was this. You're saying you talked to this person and they're in Waterdeep and you've got a location where you were supposed to meet them? We should go to that location. We should figure that out. Like, we should go talk to her. As long as that twist doesn't, like, recontextualize everything in a super weird way where they're like, well, now that doesn't make any sense. As long as it's a plausible recontextualization of what they've learned before, has tremendous power, right? It doesn't have power when it's predictable. We all knew it was the old farmer guy who was the one who was haunting this abandoned sawmill. We all knew that. That was obvious because he was the only NPC who was mean or cross, right? So that's one. When it's predictable, it's no good. And then number two, when it's not plausible, it's no good. Wait, you're saying Del went up there because the sheriff ordered her to go up there? That's wildly out of character for the sheriff. Now, there is, you can always, not always, you can sometimes make a case for, let's go talk to the sheriff. Yes, I sent her up there on a secret mission. I swore her not to tell anybody. I knew that those parents were involved in this, and I essentially exerted leverage on her to try and get evidence or proof or whatever it was, right? Like that can always, you can't always, rephrase that. But generally, you can find a way to justify that stuff as long as things are flexible enough, right? So those are the two main types of reveals that I can think of, is the direct reveal and then the twist reveal. And the beautiful thing about, say, Dell revealing this secret that she had is it leads us logically into the next little interlude that we're going to do, right? So it provides, as I said, wonderful motivation to keep adventuring, to keep exploring, to learn more. Eventually, at some point, like, you can't twist too many times before the whole thing starts to get too convoluted, and it no longer makes sense in hindsight. Like, well, why didn't this person just ask this person or whatever, right? So you have to be careful about doing too many twists in a row. But it's a great way to shed new light, recontextualize what the players understand. The players, by virtue of the fact that they're on that side of the DM screen, they fundamentally have an incomplete understanding of the world. That's the power difference between the DM and the players in D&D, is that the DM knows everything, or at least the DM is the arbiter of what's true in the world, and the players understand a portion of it and use that knowledge to explore the unknown portions of it. If too much of that knowledge that they have established, like, say, how magic works or what a rogue can do, does not match up with the weird unknown stuff that you build over here, well, now you have a disconnect, and you're diminishing the player's power. We're doing a lot of theory today, everyone, so drink deeply from the well here is what I'm saying. So that's one part of it. So the other piece of it is the other reveal that really was kind of the big. I guess there were three last night, right? So the first one was Dell making her confession. The second one was we learned what was going on with Thon's dad. I feel like this guy is going to come into the apartment. Hang on for just a moment. All right, the Plumbers here, everyone. All right, so so the second big reveal was what was going on with Thon's dad, right? And that was really a Oh, sure. That was really a payoff that we had to do in terms of what was. We knew that there was some sort of dark promise implicit in this deal with the vampire that Thon made, right? So, what was that going to be? How exactly was that We knew that bargain was going to be some sort of twisted payoff that was not going to be 100% fulfilling, but was still going to adhere to the letter of the exchange that was made, right? Yes, I remember that Garav is in the chat. That's fine. Okay, great. Thank you. I think the important thing to recognize about that deal is that the promise was made to bring Thon's father back from the dead. I just gotta latch the door because it's a little loose. I'll be right back one more time. There you go, buddy. So that's the key, right? Like, the key is that's the offer that was made, and that is what happened. And yes, chat unlocked an aspect of it that made it worse. But fundamentally, like, that was the reveal was going to be, you know, there's the twist of things are better than you think they are. This is really helpful. Things are different than you think they are. Now I understand what happened before in a whole new light. And then there's things are worse than you thought they were. Oh. And that's really what that reveal was all about. And then finally, the third type of reveal was really, or the third reveal encounter was Gulthias coming to visit Tack at night. And that was sort of, you know, none of these types of role-playing encounters like have to stand on their own, like are their own thing. Like, it's just a reveal. Like, you can have a hybrid encounter where, like last night with Gulthias, right? It was sort of a combination of reveal and offer. Gulthias revealed himself and revealed that he knew what Tack was planning. He warned her about Jadara. So we finally got to like meet this character that's been talked about so much, but never actually been directly observed or interacted with, right? So we got to meet that. It was a reveal of that persona. Okay, this actually is somebody in the world that can manifest, that has power, that is a tangible person we can start putting a definition around, right? So that's something to consider, is that I think a reveal there was important because we had hinted around Gulthias so long that it was a nice change of pace to actually, like, okay, Gulthias shows up. Oh, well, you've done quite well for yourself. So those were the big reveals last night. I mean, there was also the reveal that the party could ostensibly abolish and destroy the Book of Thorns, right, and release all of the prisoners from that. I'm gonna take that back. That was not a reveal, right? I mean, yes, that information became known by them, but it really moves us on to our next point, which is that was an offer. So Black Razor says, I have to tell you, there's this thing that you could do if you want to do it. It's available for you. All you have to do is X, Y, and Z, and you could let everyone loose. And that really was more of, I think that was more of an offer than it was necessarily a reveal of information, right? It was, I'm telling you that you could do this if you so choose. This outcome could be yours if you take this action. And that's really what an offer is about, right? Is, do you wish to act in a particularly moral or immoral fashion? Do you wish to obey or betray your principles? Do you wish to reap the reward of your righteousness or not? Right? So that's let's just talk for a moment about the things that were on offer last night. So they could abolish the prison. That was on offer. Margash, the weird tree demon or whatever that thing was, offered a boon. Just say my name 6 times and I'll teleport you wherever you want to go on this plane. Okay. Gulthias made an offer. Ally with me, I'll give you 10 times the power you have now. Join me. Defeat Jadara. You're more powerful. You're smarter. I've chosen you over her. She's mad about it. That sort of thing. So, those things are interesting because they have kind of like RP strings attached, right? We had probably a 20-minute discussion of, should we release all of the prisoners that are in this book? We could just release everybody. And that was an interesting conundrum, right? That was an interesting moral debate. That was about the right length. I wouldn't have wanted it to go much longer than that. You know, the danger in these types of debates that have like moral strings attached to them is one side gets really entrenched and another side gets really entrenched and there's no compromise and the whole thing just hangs in stasis, but then never gets resolved to anyone's satisfaction. Whereas last night it was, we have the status quo that we could maintain, and we have upending the apple cart and just throwing everything wide open and letting the gates loose and freeing whatever's inside there. And so there wasn't stasis between those decisions. It was that one side won out. We're going to keep the status quo. We're not going to free these things until we learn more information. Versus, let's just rip this book up and let everybody out who's been inside. So, didn't I want to spend an extra hour having them play Settlers of Catan? I wish there was a way to play Settlers of Catan in only an hour. I've never played that game in an hour. BSB Care says, I'd argue that the offers are really reveals, but the players are revealing their characters' morals and moral decisions to the DM rather than a DM reveal to the players. That's true. I mean, in a technical sense, that's certainly a different way of reframing the argument. My point of view is that this is DMing advice, and I'm sitting on the DM side of the screen. And so maybe from like a high level, like metagame kind of like look at it, you could say, well, these are both reveals. It's just that these people are revealing to the DM, and in this case, the DM is revealing to the players. But I think that a little specificity and a little bit of direction in terms of what angle we're approaching the topic at actually informs how to do it better, right? Like I wouldn't say, oh well, this is in this encounter there's a reveal where I'm going to get the players to reveal some moral things. That's a really weird way of putting it, and it also has a certain kind of like mind control promise to it that you can't deliver on. You can't coerce. It's very difficult, and I would argue it's a poor play experience to coerce a particular set of behaviors out of your players. This is where they're going to reveal their morals to me. It may not happen, This is where I'm going to offer them the opportunity to reveal their morals to me. Well, that's different, right? So that implies a different power dynamic and a different kind of spin on it. So I don't want to get into Settlers of Catan, guys. I hate that game. Like, and I'm talking as one of the guys who owns like the 10th anniversary, like wooden chest with all the ceramic pieces. I hate Settlers. I think it's so overrated, and I think that everybody like points at it as like, oh, if you want to learn Euro games, you should play Settlers. And so much of it is very frustrating and comes down to people trying to negotiate with each other who are suspicious of each other and don't have any reason to do so in a fun and engaging manner. Instead, it's just like, well, I guess I'll give you one. No, I'm gonna hang on to my sheep because I don't need them. I have a lot of them. And I'm just gonna hang on to them. I don't want to help you win. Yes, BSBK, you're right. That's, like I said, that's enough of Catan. I'll someday when I have some free time, we'll rant more about Catan. But in terms of like reveal versus offer, I think it's important to understand that the directionality does actually make a difference. That these terms being defined from the point of view of the DM actually makes a difference. I can't make a character do good role playing, but I can role play really well in front of a player and see if I can evoke some role playing in return, right? So that's should have played a quick game of Scythe. There's a bunch of games like that I want to love that I can't find the time to commit to. I love Pandemic Legacy, and we're in, I think, May. We've had it for 2 years or something like that, and I really want to complete it, but we haven't gotten there. So, all right. Enough of this Catan talk. So I think an offer does allow you the opportunity. Number one, like you can play to players' greed. Oh, are they going to accept this? Are they going to, like, let's learn something about what they're willing to compromise if they want more power. We've seen that several times, right? I think it can also just be offered as a reward for their currently existing behavior and see how they react to it. But it's an interesting opportunity to help the players define their characters more and kind of figure out, like, oh, what is my PC's worldview, by giving them the opportunity to gain something, power, treasure, reputation, whatever it is. But obviously with some sort of like terms and conditions, some sort of strings attached. Sometimes not even with any strings attached. Look at Margash last night, right? Like, ostensibly, there were no strings attached to that offer. I'm this weird tree demon creature, and you just say my name 6 times, I'll transport you wherever you want. There weren't any overt strings attached to that arrangement, and yet Thawne was like, nope. So, it's a great way to help your players define their characters while using the fundamental gears and levers, or the fundamental leverage of the RPG, which is you do something and you gain more power, right? At an atomic level, D&D is insert sword into monster, get gold pieces and or treasure and or experience points back out, dumped, little food pellet dumped into your tray. And an offer is that sort of same thing, right? I will give you a free ride on the tree demon. All you have to do is say yes. So, all right. And then finally, I think this is the point at which I have to kick out Garav, because we're going to talk about a thing called winding the clock too tightly. And that has to do with talking about our story threads and how we connect things in the relationships that we make. And I'm going to talk about some spoilery stuff there. So, sadly, our time together has come to an end. All right. Insert sword into ground. Summon possibly evil demon entity that grants you teleportation. I don't understand how this was not an interesting encounter. I thought that was actually like super fun. All right. So, winding the clock too tightly. This is something that came up last night that is sort of like interesting and very common and fundamental, and yet I think it needs to be addressed, right? And I often look back on the fact that we don't plan very many sessions ahead here. As one of my old D&D high school buddies said, or commented recently, like, Tom's really kind of an improvisational jazz DM. And I was like, that's true. Why is that? Like, why am I not better at scripting stuff out ahead of time and really nailing down some of the specifics, and just why am I such, if you're into writing at all, and NaNoWriMo is right around the corner, I'm more of a pantser, right? Than a plotter. So what's that all about, right? And here's the thing. So there were several times last night, or at least a couple major times last night, where the players had forgotten key pieces of the adventure, right? On the one hand, like when Avril got visited by the head of the Thieves Guild in Neverwinter, the Shadow Thieves, that's understandable. It was 2 months ago. It was the end of the session last night. It was late. She was tired. I was tired. We're all tired a little bit, right? So that part of it, like, I can forgive, that she doesn't recognize this random NPC who honestly has somewhat of a generic description and is like, oh, it's a brown-haired guy with a brown beard who has broad shoulders, but other than that, kind of like an acrobat's kind of build. Okay. That's... If I make a note of that, maybe I'll remember that later, but he didn't identify himself by name, and he just kind of walked up like, hey. So, but it was a key thing, like, oh, do you have the quest puzzle the puzzle piece to the quest that I sent you on, right? So, and she hadn't talked to him for very long, as James V points out, so I get it. Like, I understand why she didn't recognize that guy. But it was also, you were given this quest to do, you forgot it. I think the more egregious example of that was, at the very beginning of the session, I said, all right, you've just come out of the maze. You've got the sequence together. And what do you want to do? I assume you're going to free Dell, right? That's fine. And then this Protocol 66 thing came up, right? And they were like, well, we don't know who all's in the dungeon, so we can't decide whether we want to free that person. We can't decide whether we want to free the whole group because we have no idea who's in the dungeon. Well, that's not true, right? They had, in the previous session, this whole sheet of encoded names and who was in what cell, and they'd figured out how to decode the thing. All they had to do was go back and decode each sequence And honestly, I would have hand-waved that if they said, hey, you know what? Now that we're out of the weird shadow labyrinth that's trying to murderate us, we're going to sit down and we're going to spend, whatever it takes, like an hour or so, going through this thing in a very concise and careful manner and figuring out what it does. In fact, while we're taking a long, they're going to take a long rest, I'm going to do this. And I'd have gone, okay, a short rest goes by. You roll your hit points, you roll your hit dice, and boom, here's the decoded sheet, right? So that stuff was stuff that they had in the previous session. They completely spaced it on. Now, I could have helped them out by giving them like a portion of the piece that they had last time or whatever, but I didn't. In the end, it doesn't matter. It's just a place where the adventure forked. They could have gone this way, and they didn't go down that branch, right? There might have been more interesting people in the dungeon for them to at least interact with or consider the potential of, like, do I want to let these people out? Do I want to release them and attempt to capture them or whatever? As I got killed in the dungeon dive. Our chat games are not being kind to me tonight. That's all fine. My basic point here is that your players will forget things that happened 2 months ago. Your players will forget things that happened last week. I handed them that roster that had the weird, like, Sanul and Aelor, like, cryptic names all over it. It was a direct copy and paste job from the roster that they had the previous week. Whoop, nobody remembered. That's going to happen. I don't say that as, like, some sort of pejorative, like, oh, well, I guess they weren't paying attention. And that brings me around to the fundamental problem with what I call winding the clock too tightly, right? When you get super scripty about, well, because they have the roster from last week, they should easily be able to ascertain that not only is Sir Eldrick in here, but actually the High Priest of Paylor is also stuck in this thing. They're going to recognize that name when they decode the rest of the sheet, and then we'll have that guy, and we'll have this big role-playing scene, and then you prep a whole bunch of stuff that they forget about it, and one of two things happens. Either you scrap all of this stuff that you've prepped, which you're not going to want to do, and leads you to point number 2, which is you somehow hit them over the head with the clue bat and hand them the handout or whatever it is, and then they don't feel like they've earned the reveal of that information. They haven't earned, they feel like they're being led through your story as opposed to following their own path and exploring the story you're building together. And I think that's the main reason I am a shoot from the hip kind of GM. It's like, I have some ideas about what's going on here. Yes, that means I don't necessarily always define things super specifically, super solid right up front. Unless I have a strong idea of who that person is. So you do kind of like those initial, you do have elements get introduced that are kind of squishy and you kind of feel your way around. There might be some vagueness attached to them. But it also means I don't fall into the trap of having the clock wound so tight that if they don't set the alarm for whatever, I don't know how the metaphor plays out there, but if it's wound so tight it breaks, then your game breaks down, is the idea. If all of the pieces, all of the cogs and wheels within the clock don't exactly align, it stops telling time. And likewise, if you build your story elements so tightly interconnected, so dependent upon the party learning A and decoding B and remembering C, and that gets them to D, if you don't have alternate paths at the very least built to get around to D, they may just kind of hang on B and like not remember that thing in C. And then you're calling for like intelligence checks, like, oh yeah, you remember you had that paper roster. So that's yes, Soon Raccoon makes a good point here, right? DMs have two things that make remembering things easier for them, right? The DMs know what's important and what's not, and they have the full context for all of the information that's out there. So they know that this guy is important, this NPC that they met is important. We need to come back to him. Whereas the players might be like, oh, okay, random bar guy, whatever. Didn't make a mark on them. So it's very easy to get your DM blinders on and go, why didn't they, why did they go pay attention? Why did they pay attention to this thing over here? That's not important. And the players don't have that. So, Hello says M says, I like letting the players' attempts to deduce what is going on reveal the story. They make a guess, and that guess becomes part of the story. I absolutely deploy this technique all the time, and I think it's important to be open to what the players are suggesting. There's a couple things, right? Number one, it makes your job easier. Oh, I don't have to invent a bunch of plot. I've got 4 other people at the table who are working at doing it for me. So it makes your job easier. Number two, more importantly, players like to be right. Players like figuring things out. That's their job. Your job is to reveal information as the DM. The player's job is to figure things out, to figure out that information. And if they come up with 3 different possible solutions and none of them work, they just start to get frustrated. And if they come up with 6 possible solutions and none of them work, and then you go, well, why didn't you go bribe the town, the town administrator? Because we're lawful good? Well, that doesn't mean you couldn't bribe a corrupt official. Now you feel like, again, you're being led through the story as opposed to exploring the story together. So that's it's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's an incredibly powerful revelation when you realize, oh, the players want to figure this out, but the solution doesn't have to be your solution, right? The other spin I'll give on this, the other tip I'll give on this is, I think it's important to take their solution and maybe put like a slight spin on it, a slight twist, a slight recontextualization. Yes, it is like this, but it turns out that it was the mayor's wife who was the one who was the doppelganger or whatever it was, right? And she was using her influence behind the scenes and whispering in his ear the entire time. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, now you've sort of like met them halfway, right? Like they've figured out enough of it that they can solve the case. But they had to just work that one extra angle harder. Like, oh, it's not him. Oh, maybe it's his wife. It is his wife. Oh, well, we got it. So that's S. Del Castillo points out this is how players get attached to random background NPCs, is they don't know what the context is and who's important and who's not. And that's one of the reasons I like to be more of an improvisational DM, is I can now take advantage of, they really love this guy. I might have crafted this wonderfully intricate and multi-layered NPC who's the, whatever, the mayor of town or whatever, and then everybody's like, well, we hate that guy. Okay. And then they randomly get attached to the barn hand who works at the big dairy operation outside of town. Oh yeah, we met him at the bar. We love that guy. Yeah. when you're an improvisational DM, you have the flexibility to move some of that stuff that you might have planned for this. Oh, well, they're going to get very involved with them, with the mayor's family and rescuing his daughter or his son or whatever it is. And now you can just take that stuff and go, oh, they really love Olaf. Olaf's dog has been kidnapped. We got to help Olaf, you guys. As Hello Says M points out, the bar hand turns out to be the Zentrum spy. Create Cam says, I just brought up how I regretted not using their ideas to change who the big bad was, and my players said they were happy I stuck with my pre-planned story. So, know your party, know your group. Like, I'm not saying that this can't work. Like, being a strictly scripted DM can't work. There are definitely plenty of cases where it does work. And just like I, as an improvisational DM, have to struggle with, like, maybe finding details and adjusting the story in order to pull it all into a coherent whole, a complete arc. Likewise, I'm sure that people who are very strict scripted DMs have to struggle on the opposite side of, like, oh, they went into this place that I don't understand, and they have a different set of skills where they go, oh, okay, this guy must be, and they start consulting some tables or whatever it is, right? So I'm sure we all have our own way of compensating. If the way that you DM works for you and works for your party, that's fine. I also think there's a certain amount of finesse in this whole process of sitting back as the DM and listening and listening and listening and listening, and then maybe kind of chiming in, well, you know this because of this, or give me a check, you remember, and kind of shaping how the debate goes. There's a lot of finesse to doing that, and then not seeming like you just come right back with, well, you got it. Because yes, the players want to be right. That's the fun. When we go back to the atomic structure of what D&D is, and you say insert sword, really what we're, insert sword, receive gold. Really what we're talking about is I will be challenged and I will give an extraordinary effort and I will be rewarded appropriately. If your players don't feel like they're getting challenged, if they don't feel like they have to put in an appropriate amount of effort, then the reward is hollow. And we've all played in that game, right? Where you give away too much treasure, or you power level people too fast, or whatever. And I want to say that one of the things that I'm happy about with this particular campaign that we're running is I've just abandoned XP. They level up when it feels right? And look at how happy everybody was last, like, especially Amy, like, oh, we're level 5, we're kicking ass, oh my god, right? And you do have to put up with a certain amount of, like, are we leveled yet? Are we going to level yet? Are we, kind of like, are we there yet? Backseat driving. But it's so much more rewarding to me to make sure that they get that nugget of reward after they've put in the effort. And I just don't like the bookkeeping of doing XP, and I feel like XP kind of gets out of hand where they might easily defeat a monster that's far more powerful than they expect. And all of a sudden, all of your progression kind of like goes out the window. Like, oh, well, all right, well, you guys are level 7 now. So if I do use XP, I often just like go, well, I want them to level up about every 5 sessions. So I'm just going to take the XP for that level, from level whatever it is, 5 to 6. I'm going to take that 8,000 experience points and I'm going to divide it by 5. And so every time they get 400 XP. or whatever it was, right? So, you can run into the opposite problem of milestone leveling just goes too fast and they jump, shoot up the levels. You have to be careful about that too, right? Then ultimately that goes back to know your party, what they're willing to tolerate, and whether they feel they have earned the reward that is being placed before them. All right, so that's a lot of really like high-level DMing philosophy stuff today, which I'm glad we've talked about. If you have other questions, I'll entertain 10 minutes or so if you have something else, maybe 15 if there's a lot of discussion that we want to have. But I don't have any other major topic. Like, that's pretty good for today, right? But if you have something, I said we would have time for Q&A, so please feel free to throw it out there, and I will give you my insight, my personal take on whatever your own issue, whatever topic you would like to hear about. Hello, says M. Says, after White Plume Mountain, what do you think you would move to next? So I have some pretty solid ideas on where that this is all going to go. We're going to have, I would say probably 3 or 4 sessions in Waterdeep. The players really wanted to get to an urban adventure, right? Where there's people around, there's civilization around, there's plenty of interaction, there's people to meet, relationships to forge, all that sort of stuff, right? So we're going to go to Waterdeep. I think, next week we'll probably hit this Jadara thing pretty hard. And then I have another... I have a Living Forgotten Realms adventure that was recommended to me that's based in Waterdeep that looks like an interesting kind of mystery investigation adventure. So I think we'll play that. And then once we get this urban adventure, we do this, what I want to call like interlude in Waterdeep, right? Once we get that done, I've settled on adapting or upscaling or converting Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. That's where I want to go next. I think it's a classic module that everybody recognizes and everybody looks back on with fondness. I've been running it a little bit for my home game, and I can tell you there's some serious flaws in it. But I think it could use an update to 5e. It's got name recognition, which hopefully will bring people in. And, I hate to say it, but, it's not Tomb of Annihilation, which literally everybody else is running. If you want to watch a Tomb of Annihilation stream, you have 6 different places you can go to watch that. And much as I am intrigued by that adventure, and it seems like a really solid piece of work, and I think my players would really love the big sandbox of it, I don't see a benefit to Saving Throw as a channel playing it. That's the way that is. So I think that's where we're going to go next. I think we'll have this, probably month-long interlude in Waterdeep, and then move on to Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Although I think we're going to, I always put my own spin on stuff, and I think it'll be more interesting than just a straight-up one-for-one conversion. We'll need to do some work on this, and probably do some work on this together. I could run Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil for the next 20 sessions. So you need to understand that one of the big accomplishments of my DMing career was running Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and I actually ran the forums for that adventure over on Monty Cook's site. So I am intimately familiar with Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and I know at least 15 different ways you can hack that plot line to make it far more direct and accessible and playable and whatnot. I've spent a lot of time hashing and rehashing Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil. And yes, there was a design consideration of this is our first big mega module for 3E, so let's showcase every single monster from the book, but there's a lot of ways around that. So it's tough, right? It's a tall task, but that was the adventure that was my entry into becoming a moderator on Monty Cook's forums, and then meeting Monty and me becoming friends with him. So I have a lot of fondness for that adventure. I also recognize a bunch of the challenges to it. Here's the thing about that adventure. You could very easily go from where we are now into Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil. Very easily. Warrior Kane, welcome to the chat. Yeah, it's also very easy for that module to turn into a shambles. And that's one of the things that I enjoyed about being a participant in the forums there was a whole group of DMs who were there to support each other and to make our games better, not necessarily, screw our players, but understand what was happening, help DMs figure out, like, oh, this is going to be a killer encounter. How can I mitigate this? Am I missing something? Like, why doesn't this guy just murderate all of these people? Well, here's some ideas, etc., etc., etc. So, it's funny that you bring that up, because I have very fond memories, and I did a lot of work resorting and putting that thing, honing that thing, and we played it all the way to the end. I remember I bought like a Johnny Storm Fantastic Four Human Torch figure that was like translucent, and then I painted like even more orange flames on it and stuff like that, and that was Imix, and he marched around the battlefield and like swacked people. The other thing that I remember is that like I ended up upscaling a bunch of monsters because my players kind of got ahead of the XP curve, and also they were all optimized, and there were like 6 or 8 of them, and they just destroyed stuff. So there we go. Warrior Kane says, what is your dream epic level 20th level character? So it's funny. I'm playing in a 20th level campaign. There's a couple different issues. It's an interesting revelation of the design boundaries within 5e, right? I played a Dwarven Barbarian who was 20th level, who was absolutely kick-ass. His main problem was, I think I ended up giving him like winged boots or something so that he could fly. That was the main thing. Was, yeah, he couldn't cast magic, but when he raged, he was just a force to be reckoned with, and he didn't take much damage at all because he was raging. He was resistant to a lot of stuff, especially if you take the Bear Totem Warrior level at 3rd level, where you give damage resistance to everything but psychic. It's pretty awesome. He had some crappy, like a will save would floor him and stuff like that. He's a little one-dimensional as a character. His whole thing was like, I solve stuff by beating it and like literally carving my way through it. So that was interesting. Now I'm playing a 22nd level sorcerer, and the challenge that's interesting there is that even though you're 22nd level, or we're above 20th level, and then you're 22nd level, there's still only so many spells that you know. it's not that many. It's like 20 or something like that, 18. And you think to yourself, oh man, 20 spells, that's a ton of spells. Well, over 9 levels, no, that's not a ton of spells, because you're going to know 1 9th level spell, and you're going to know 2 8th level spells, and you're going to know 2 7th level spells, and you're going to know 2 6th level spells, and now you're halfway through the spell list, and you've already used up 7 of your 20 spells or whatever. So all of those little like first level spells, you start dropping those off like amazingly, right? So you do have some analysis paralysis in that you're trying to figure out like what spells should I take. But it does kind of limit your power, and like I can't load up on all of the fire spells because there's no way I can take all of the fire spells. I just can't learn all of them. So that's what's interesting to me, is you would think a 22nd level sorcerer would be the master of magic and be able to like wing all kinds of spells all over the place. It's not as your toolbox isn't as deep there as you might expect. Maybe it's different playing a wizard character, but certainly with a sorcerer, again, it's a little bit like I have my lane and I can't do anything about the rest of this stuff. So I don't have a great answer for your question. What would be my ideal 20th level character? I loved my 20th level Dwarven Barbarian. But, so the interesting thing was, well, we just sort of created these characters out of whole cloth at 20th level. We didn't play them up to 20th level and then decide to keep playing the game, right? So these guys were fashioned out of whole cloth at 20th level, and the problem with that is they're min-maxed for 20th level. They don't have kind of like all of the weird stripes and variegations that you might see in a character that had organically grown over 20 levels. The other part of it is they just don't have the magic items, and that's a big limitation across D&D, is that attuning to 3 items, that's it. You can't attune to more than 3 items. And at 20th level, you're struggling. It's like, okay, well, clearly if I have the opportunity, I'm taking Staff of the Magi, I'm attuning to that. But now, if there's anything else that I want to, like, okay, I've got a Robe of Eyes. Oh, well, now 2 of my 3 slots are eaten up, and I want something that's going to give me some movement, so I'm going to take a Broom of Flying or whatever. Well, now there's my 3 things. If I find a book or something that I have to attune to, well, now which 3 magic items am I going to use? You got to give one up. So there's some interesting design limitations, so that even, I hate to say it, but 20th level characters don't necessarily feel like 20th level characters. But just the campaign premise of starting at 20th, the most fun thing about having a 20th level character who doesn't have a backstory is just being able to improvise all the stuff that guy's done. Oh yeah, of course I know the High Cleric, the Archcleric of Valuna. Oh yeah, I did a couple quests for him. I saved like an entire temple of his from being destroyed by a blue dragon. I fought the thing with my fists. I choked it to death. It was pretty awesome. He owes me. Yeah, we can get your friend resurrected, no problem. That sort of stuff is fun. Warrior Kane says, if I made a character, I'd want to make a character named Uncle Pockets, where he'd have a trench coat with bags of magic holding his pockets, and it would be loaded with all kinds of good things. I mean, that, I hate to say it, there's a game where you can play that already, and the game is called Toon. It's one of my favorites, and that's one of the abilities that you can give your character, is they just have, what are they, it's called like a pocket of many things or something like that. Like they have this pocket where, like this ever full pocket where you just name whatever you want, reach into the pocket, and it's there. There's so many times where I think, people don't play enough Toon. So, all right. Any other questions out there? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up the stream. We're kind of over time, etc. Ah, yes, Thomas W. D. Young. Please give me. Yeah, I'll try and remember the reroll. But next time Iron Keep comes around, let us know, and I'll put that. tune. Definitely. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I thought it was a really great talk today. We got into some kind of heavy RPG theory about DMing and kind of the gears and wheels and techniques at play there. I thought it was a fruitful conversation, and we've got plenty of interesting stuff to prep on Tuesday. So we'll circle back here Tuesday at 2 o'clock and make that happen. The next con I'm attending is Gamehole Con. Well, that's not entirely true. I have tickets to go to Big Bad Con. My wife is going out of town the weekend before that to go game with a bunch of her friends. And I said, are you going to want to go up to Oakland and do a big con? And she's like, oh yeah, we'll still go. And now she's like, I don't know, that might be a lot of... that might be a lot back-to-back 2 weeks in a row. So I'm supposed to go to Big Bad Con. If you haven't looked into it, it's probably not too late to get into on it to show up and do some games on demand and stuff like that. It's a great indie alternative con. There's a lot of just like kind of cutting edge storytelling gaming going on there and stuff like that. It's a real inclusive environment. I really enjoy that con. It's very thoughtfully put together, and it's a great place to kind of play stuff that you wouldn't get to play at a standard tabletop gaming convention. So I really enjoy that con, even though last year was the first year that I actually went. I had a fantastic experience there, and this whole scheduling conflict just sort of came up in the last couple of months, but I was definitely planning to go to that. Now I'm kind of on the fence. If I end up going by myself, it's a 5.5 hour drive up to Oakland. Do I want to stay at the hotel by myself? I mean, I've got friends who are going, so I could hang out with them. It has a lot less appeal from a personal standpoint, not because anything that the con is doing. So I'm up in the air on that. And then in November, me and Dom and Gaurav are all going to Gamehole Con in Madison. That's just a couple weeks later. We're going to go there, and that is a fantastic con. I admittedly am a guest of honor there, or a special guest. I don't know. I don't remember what I'm considered. Anyway, Dungeon Bastard shows up, and I appear in all of my Dungeon Bastardly regalia, sweatbands and wristbands and all. And if you love like old school D&D, it is a terrific con. The lineup there is amazing. And if you love new school D&D, Chris Perkins, Mike Merles, Chris Lindsay, Jeremy Crawford, they will all be there. We're going to be doing some live streaming. I'll be sitting in on that. Gaurav will be sitting in that. Ed Greenwood is playing with us. John Kovalik is playing in the game. Chris Perkins is running it. I believe Pat Rothfuss is also at the table. Like, it's insane who they've got at that con for this. They're probably going to have about 3,000 to 4,000 people in Madison for this thing, and you'll be able to watch it online. But I'll be doing some DMing clinics and running a couple different games, so check that out. Alex Kammer, who runs it, is just a stand-up guy and really committed to putting on the best possible experience. He wants to put on a really great role-playing show, and he's done it. This is started off as just him and his friends, and it's still largely him and his friends, but they do a terrific time. They do a terrific job of putting together a regional con that has top-notch offerings. So check that out. Yeah. We should have STS Con, Saving Throw Show Con, in the studio. Wasn't that what Monday night was, Jordan? Wasn't that Saving Throw Show Con? It certainly looked like that was Saving Throw Show Con. So, yeah. So check that out. Big Bad Con is October 13th, I want to say. You guys have Google. You figure it out. Where's my calendar? Stop that. So, September, October. Yeah, October 14th and 15th is Big Bad Con. And then I believe... Oh, no? What is this? November, why is this not on my calendar? I think it's November 9th through the 12th is Gamehole Con. There's a good way to find that out too. Just put in Gamehole Con. You go to their website, and it says right at the top, November 2nd through the 5th is Gamehole Con. So, those. That's it. All right. Very good. Very good. I'm not familiar with Arcade Con in Dayton. There's a lot of those small regional ones are tough, right? It's very difficult for me to get to, even to Gary Con, which is such a big and important con, but it's hard for me to break away. It's going to be a heartbreaker to leave Los Angeles in November. I've done it for the past 4 or 5 years, but the business has been tight over the past couple of years and then taking off. Like I had to cancel Gen Con this year because I couldn't miss some stuff. So it always gets a little tougher. Yes, DJ Regular. If you're in the Bay Area and you're interested in games that are not Dungeons and Dragons, go to Big Bad Con. Absolutely go. Just go. Play some fun indie story games. I mean, you can play Blades in the Dark. You can play Apocalypse World. Any of that, like all of those things that have been influences on me in one way, shape, or form or another. You can play at Big Bad Con, and I really recommend that con. I'm a big fan of it. Yeah. All right, everybody. So you can't go to every con. It's true. Let's take a look at our calendar, see what's up for the rest of the week. All right, so this has been Disorganized Play. Tonight, DJ DM David Crennan runs a Star Wars Edge of the Empire game, Never Tell Me the Odds. That's tonight. Tomorrow night, DJ DM Jordan Caves Callerman is back with Wild Cards. Saturday, it's time for you to catch up on everything that you missed. We have so much content this week, including our second episode of our new show, Tempting Fate, with Amy Dolan, Gina DeVivo, Eliza Pearl, Ellie Glavich, Rick Budd, and Nick Gilman. They had their first episode on Sunday. They're coming back for episode 2. And we had our first episode of Uncanny Valley on Tuesday night. So we've got a lot of stuff in the hopper. We're going to try and diversify some of our offerings here a little bit more. We've got a lot of other exciting things queued up. If you back at our Patreon at the $10 a month or higher level, you get early access to the new Experience Pointers podcast with Gaurav and Jordan and Megan talking about GMing tips. I'm going to guest on that sometime soon. So you get early access to that. Otherwise, about 6 to 10 days later, it comes out for the general public to consume. So you can check out Experience Pointers as well. So a lot of exciting things happening at Saving Throw. Stay tuned. We've got more things in store. So thank you so much to everyone who contributed an idea, who joined in the discussion today. I really appreciate your attendance and your attention and your fandom and your passion and your willingness to share your ideas with me, because it helps me run a better game, and hopefully that provides a better experience for everyone. Kind of like to sum up, I thought last night, I said at the top of the show I was worried about having enough content to fill and whether it would be an interesting and compelling time, or whether we would just sort of stall out and run out of gas. We didn't do that. It turned out to be a really fascinating, really meaningful, and interesting and compelling exchange, I thought, between the various players and the various events that happened. And so it actually turned out, like with zero combat on the board, it turned out to be one of our most interesting sessions, I thought. It was certainly climactic and suspenseful, right? What's going to happen next, and is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? It demonstrates the power of the characters and the stakes and the storytelling that's at play versus the mechanics of the monsters and the weapons and the spells and the combat and the dice, right? And that's certainly been a hard lesson for me to learn, but it's been good to get there. It was very satisfying to get to the end of the night and go, that was a good game. There was some really great stuff that happened. There weren't any major hiccups where I went, oh, well, this is off the rails. This is not going well. So, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thanks to Farquaad and all of our mods who help keep the channel friendly, safe, and accessible for everyone in our audience. We appreciate your hard work and dedication. And maybe I will be in the studio. I've talked to Dom. Now that Dom has some free time, maybe I'll just go over to the studio and I'll do some of these things I'll do Disorganized Play from the studio there. So, it would certainly alleviate some of the mailman kind of business and the visiting landscapers and all that kind of garbage. So, with that in mind, stay tuned to Saving Throw and our regulars. Until next time, let's dungeon. 7,002. I remember from Tuesday, BSB Care. 7,002. We're there. We got there.